last 48 hours, we've had a whole host of conversations on currencies, on where tech needs to be deployed, not just in the private sector, but the public sector as well, on trade, on currencies. We've spoken about green finance. We've spoken about finding this capital that our economies desperately need in order to power the next phase of growth, to all the turbulence that we're facing at the moment. But the best part about AFIS is that right at the tail end of all these conversations, we get to speak and hear from our regulators, because we have a long list of things that we would like them to do. But it's always interesting to hear their perspective. How are things running? This long wish list that we have, for example, on things like de-dollarization. Is it feasible? How is it going to work? How do you protect the financial system? I'm very glad to say that we have 3 central bank governors who will take part in this conversation at the tail end of AFIS. I'd like to introduce them one by one and bring them up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we bring up Manuel António Tiago Diaz. He's governor of the National Bank of Angola. Also joining us on this panel, we have Jean-Claude Kassi, the governor of the Central Bank of West African States. We also have Aivo ANDRIANARIVELO, the governor of the Central Bank of Madagascar. Oh, wow, the room really went silent there. Okay, no pressure. We'll get you a good conversation. Gentlemen, I want to start with some of the big themes of the year. De-dollarization on one hand, but the flip side of that is payments. We need to be able to make payments in our own currencies across the markets that we have. That is the ambition. But A, is it feasible? And B, how do we do it? Jean-Claude, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Can I speak in French?
It's really, can I go in French?
First of all, since this is the first time I'm taking the floor, I wish to say thank you to the Togolese authorities for the welcome, for first of all the invitation and the welcome. I would also like to say thank you to the organizers, FIS, for Jeune Afrique and its daughter, and for the invitation and the quality of discussions. I think that actually it's a question that is topical. That is the issue of payments and de-dollarization. It was also raised within the framework of BRICS. Oftentimes, it is a subject, but there's a link among all this. BRICS is a group of countries that decided to put themselves together to trade more. Of course, it's a group of countries that have a certain level of capacity. At what level? Represents 25% of the global GDP. It's important, and of course they have the means to support their politics. And then there's also the matter of de-dollarization. Within the African continent, when reference is made to payments, it is a great concern. Why? Because the African continent, as has been said, is practically 1.3 to 1.4 billion people. In 2020, we succeeded in establishing the Africa Free Trade Continental Area, and it has a huge potential. And we have to be able to transmit all of these potentials into a concrete reality through in terms of economic growth and so on. In order for this continental free trade area to be concrete, there has to be payments. Payments among all African economies. As you know, we have a number of countries with different currencies, and the fact of having established the conditions through an efficient payment system that is viable, rapid, a system in which everybody trusts, and economic operators requires a mechanism. That is why the project that is ongoing with the Afrexim Bank, over which a lot of progress has been done, and a number of agreements have been signed among participants. I think it's going to be a major stage. Africans, operators can trade among themselves without having to go through a foreign currency. In other words, we are going to essentially use national and local currencies. So if there is a regional currency, it could also be done, it could also be used, and this is going to help. Commerce within Africa is less than 10%, very low. The free trade continental area can make it possible for us to mobilize savings and so on. And to be able to do that, we require an effective payment system. At this stage, that's what I want to say.
First, get payments to follow, and then after that, you can start having conversations around whether or not we actually need a unified currency.
Non, c'est pas ce que j'ai dit.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. Commerce, the system of payments is important, is essential. Now, do we require a single currency? Yes, I think the decision has already been taken at continental level for us to have a single currency, first of all, among the central bank systems in Africa, and then we work at the various currency systems in different regions of the sub-region, and then we work towards a single currency and a regional single currency. But what should be pointed out is that be it within the national framework or within a common currency or a regional one that looks at currencies that belong to a single central bank, the first thing to do is to have a rate of inflation that is under control, be it within the framework of a single currency or not. And then the system should be able to mobilize savings, create growth, and above all, guarantee a convertible currency. To achieve this, we require a virtuous currency politics. The budget system has to be in line because growth, sector-based reform, and so on, competitivity, and so on, under budgetary policies and under monetary policy, budgetary policies ensures that indebtedness is in line with other invariables. This will lead to a successful single currency. As I said, at national level, these elements are essential. Now, when you're looking at a regional single currency, I think it would then be more easy to control inflation. If I should take the example of UEMOA, take the example within the continent, the inflation rate is between 17 and 20%. In UEMOA, in 2022, it was 7.5%, but today we're going to end up having 4.4%. Now, trade. We have 8 countries with one single currency. Transactions, commercial transactions are done in an easier manner. We don't need to change, go into exchange mechanisms all the time. So I think that's the objective of a single currency. That is why at continental level, the Association of Central Banks are working in this direction. And if I should take the example of ECOWAS, we have 8 currencies, 700 billion worth of economy, but trade is about 5%. That is why work was done in ECOWAS to establish a single currency that is going to increase regional trade. Thank you.
Exact same question. De-dollarization has been a hot topic, but is it viable? Can we pull it off? What's the perspective from Angola?
Bonjour à tous. Et
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Well, the opinion of Angola has to be with regard to de-dollarization is that it's a long-term thing, because internally we had the dollarization of the economy over several years, and we decided to reduce the importance of the dollar internally, be it with regard to the concession of credit or at ports. And this also, given external shocks, permits the economy to adjust itself better. And then trade, the international trade, it's true that with regard to countries that belong to what is referred to as BRICS, they are looking forward to gradually substituting the dollar with the currency of members of the grouping. But we're saying that, as the governor said, given that the level of trade among African countries is still very low, and given that, given the arrangements that are made at the level of payment systems. For instance, in Southern Africa, we have an arrangement that is going to make it possible to achieve transactions in real time between member states of the grouping. We think that all of this will facilitate naturally trading among African countries. But when it will come to achieving or having transactions with third countries where trading is with significant trading relationships, therefore in the middle and long term, we still require recoursing to the strongest currency.
I want to bring up a quote from your colleague in South Africa. Lesetja made some interesting comments about the idea of having a single African currency, and to reduce what he said into one word, he said it was impossible, wouldn't happen, can't happen. So where do you stand on this de-dollarization debate? Because I know de-dollarization is one part of it, making it easier for us to make payments across Africa with our own currencies is another part of that debate. What's the view from Madagascar?
Merci.
Thank you. I thank the Togolese government and for having organized this meeting. A currency, by definition, has to do with the capacity to trade and so on. If our trade is still at a very low level, it wouldn't be useful to us because we have to import from elsewhere. Therefore, the de-dollarization of international trade has to be maintained. But the question that we need to ask somewhere along the line is, given the monetary scenario that we have in Africa, has it made it possible for 12 countries to improve their trading? And I think that but my colleague governor has said, referred to free trade. Free trade in all its definitions is not only about commercial trading. Free trade is among the population. Free trade with regard to the free movement of goods, the free movement of capital. So if we only refer to unifying currency, it's not enough. There have to be regulations that make it possible for free trade in all its ramifications. And Africa is concerned here. Imagine neighboring countries where that cannot be that are not borderless, and among Africans, the only people recognized by these two countries are the populations of the neighboring countries, not other nationals from other parts of Africa. So you can imagine Africans vis-a-vis Schengen. I mean, in Schengen, people move freely. Now, the fact of moving means you're going to spend, you're going to engage in commercial transactions in these states, and this is very difficult in Africa. Now, if you could imagine two countries using the CFA franc, it is the same parity, but they are not. It is not interchangeable between them. If you come to CEMAC countries, you go, and from a UEMOA country, you have to think of an exchange mechanism. How could you then think about Africa as an idea, as an economic power? Of course, we have the power, but we don't trust ourselves. Our peoples cannot move freely in Africa. And this restricts the three actions because if it's easier to go to China, people will move to China and purchase from China. This it is logical. But once I experienced this between two countries, I wanted to take a flight from a neighboring country that is 20 kilometers. I spent 1 hour crossing the border. Economic integration, where are you? If I cannot cross the border, and I asked the other country on the other side, I said, what are the activities? They said they have something called zip line. I said, you should have created a zip line concept so that it would take us 1 minute to move from one country to another. Here we spent 1 hour and I missed the flight. This is Africa. How can we Africans develop if we are in silos when it comes to energy? The countries that have excess energy, but the next country, instead of taking this power from the other side, they now have to cross the entire country, 400 kilometers, to get its electricity. Where is the logic here? Where is our logic when it comes to energy economy? Dams are very expensive. We are not Africans. We are just Togolese, Zimbabweans. We could be Angolans, but we are not Africans. We have to think larger. We have to make bigger investments. We have to trade freely in every in all its ramifications. Therefore, in this way, we won't need to go to China and so on. We could just go across the border and go and get what is available in South Africa, that if Madagascar should require it. But this is not possible now. Our monetary union created customs unions, but at the end of the day, what has changed? Has this increased trading transactions towards our common monetary union? So we should be asking ourselves, is it useful? Wouldn't it be more better for us to have a regulation that is going to manage all these transactions that will make it possible for things to be done more freely with autonomy, though? So I think this is we should look at CDBC where everybody has its independence, but we have to trust transactions. Reference was made by PAPS to PAPS. It's an initiative that is going to make it possible for each country to keep its currency. Each currency has its convergence and monetary policy. But at the end of the day, what is more important is trading. Currency is not the basis for relationship between two countries. It is trust. It is ease of transactions and a common policy to trade. Thank you.
I want to pick up on the themes that you've raised there, the questions around trust. Trust in currencies, trust in authorities, trust in competent regulation. And I want to front run a question that I know will come up when we get to the Q&A in about 10, 15 minutes from the audience. And Governor Kassi knows this from our session last year, where there was a lot of interesting questions from the audience who they're saying, yeah, but what about crypto? What about crypto, right? In the last 5 years, we've seen we've seen a lot of individuals and businesses still trading in cryptocurrencies, despite central banks, despite finance ministries saying, we don't think you should go into this space. So clearly there is demand, right, for crypto assets or crypto solutions in many of the economies that we essentially operate in. Has any of this experience made you change your minds about how you think about crypto and the place of crypto assets or the tech from the crypto world in the financial system? Governor Kassi, let's start with you.
Thank you. Make something very specific. Last year, I did not say I was against crypto.
I'm not saying you were against crypto,
okay,
right? I'm just saying that last year,
what I said
right,
was crypto, the area of crypto, for us, crypto asset. It's something that is feasible, but we said it is not a cryptocurrency. So as any asset, those who want to engage and use it can do it. But they have to be aware that, as we have seen in many places where those assets were used, they are high and down. So they have to be ready to really manage the risk. It's up to them. But there are no cryptocurrencies. For us, currency is very clear. It's a medium of exchange, universal in the area. It's a store of value. It's a unit of account. So if you don't have that, you're not a cryptocurrency. You're not a currency. So it's an asset. Of course, each one has to assess the risk return that he wants to take and make the investment up and down. You manage it. Okay? But to go beyond that, what I think is important is to note that, of course, the world is moving. And today we have specific issues in terms of, for example, the development of fintech. the fintech that are really bringing some value added in some of the activities. If I take the example of the UMOA country, we have already almost 50, we have 150 fintech operating in various types of activities, payment and so on. We have electronic, les établissements de monnaie électronique that are operating, and we've seen the growth of their activities just really multiplying by tenfold. Today, those, just the operation is almost more than 96,000 billion CFA franc. So, and they are behind the very sharp increase that we have noticed in terms of financial inclusion. We started in 2016, financial inclusion was less than 40%. Today we have above 70%. It's not the bank, it's not the micro finance, it's the fintech, the electronic operation that allow us to increase the level, the rate of financial inclusion. So what we are in fact doing, we are really expanding the regulation to allow them to do more. And today we see them really getting into, and I was very glad I listened to the previous speaker that you were talking to. They are expanding in very close collaboration with the banks and so on to expand their activities. But as they are expanding, which is good, because they are bringing some value added in the system, they are bringing services to the various economic agents, as we are doing with banks, as we are doing with microfinance. We have to ensure through proper, adequate regulation that they are not having risk to the people that are using them. Because our job as regulator is to make sure that the average user is protected while using those services. So I think they will expand, they will continue to expand. I think they have a very, very, very high potential in front of them. And to us, they are playing also a very key role, because one of our objectives is to reduce the amount of currency that people use, notes and coins and so on, because notes and coin are increasing. It's costly and not efficient. So what the fintech sector is bringing is really accelerating the movement from note and coins to the electronic currency. So this is very important. So I think it's something that we have put several very critical elements. We have a current dialogue with them. We are, in fact, created several possibilities for them to test their product, in lab before going into the real sector and so on and so on. So they are becoming, and they are already, and they will become even more in the near future, a very important actor in the scene, the financial scene. They will continue to develop, but they have to do it, as I said, under the regulation of the central bank to ensure that the risks are in adequation with what they are doing, particularly in terms of protecting the user. Thank you.
Governor Diaz.
Le gouverneur.
The fintech crowd clearly like that one. Governor Diaz, I want to come to you on the question of crypto assets. There's still clearly a lot of demand for them in several markets. We see that in Kenya, we see that in Nigeria. Where do you stand on this debate around where crypto fits in the financial system?
When it comes to the cryptocurrency, I believe that the bottom line has to do with trust. Indeed, when it comes to cryptocurrency, we don't know who is behind. This is why we in Angola, in particular the Central Bank, we always warn the consumers to be very careful. The various cryptocurrencies in offering that can come from everywhere. And indeed, the central bank clearly cannot assume responsibility if things get worse. This being said, we are well aware of the importance of these currencies, of the fintechs in the economy. This is why in the central bank, we are reviewing the digital currency at the central bank. There are several countries already have started deploying the digital currency of the central bank. Studies are fast advanced for adopting this type of currency. Same applies to Angola. We're trying to see how best we can also have this digital currency very soon indeed. This being said, we've had a whole lot of people talk about fintechs, and in Angola, in order to increase financial inclusion in our countries, obviously, we should come up with alternative payment mechanisms, and fintechs can contribute in achieving this, giving the extension of our boundaries, giving the low level of banking and the level of financial inclusion.
If you have any questions that you'd like to put to the panel, please have those ready. We'll come to you in about 5 minutes or so. Governor Aivo, I want to come to you. This is a conversation I had about 6 or so years ago, and individuals in the payment space, when it came to the crypto question, said, look, from where we stand, the reason why individuals would turn to crypto, for the most part, is because they have a need that's not being met in the financial system. Either payments are too expensive, or they're too slow, or they're unable to move capital from point A to point B as efficiently as they would like. In the last 5 years, have you seen any developments in the crypto space that has made you change how you think about crypto's place in the financial system in Madagascar?
Let me start off by making a clear distinction. In the past, there was just a currency, a banknote, and a structural currency, which we refer to as transfer. There are new forms that emerge now. We have the mobile money, we have the CBDC, we have the crypto. Let's not mix it up, CBDC and crypto. CBDC, it's the central bank digital money.
Supposed to be more secure. La crypto-monnaie.
Cryptocurrency, as far as Madagascar is concerned, is not a currency which is used, but on the international system, now nature abhors vacuum. The banks, central banks, filled in an area where the cryptos are succeeding. Now, it is very risky. This is why cryptocurrency has evolved tremendously over the past 5 years. But when it comes to trade transactions, to me, CBDC is the journey or the way to go. In Madagascar, the problem is the following. The very first expenditure of the central bank, that is minting money. That is number one. Now, in another context, mobile money, there is already a platform dealing with mobile money. Transaction on this platform, in terms of its volume, equals the volume of transactions on the RTGS of the central bank. That is half of flow of fund is not kept under check by the central bank. It that creates a systemic problem. And we must preempt this. This is why the Central Bank in Madagascar did two things. First of all, to think putting in place the CDBC, but the objective is to reduce transaction using banknotes, reduce the cost of transaction when it comes to mobile money. Well, from point A to point B, in Madagascar, it's very useful. You can transfer a currency in 10 seconds. But to do so, otherwise you will spend half a day with all the implying risks. But with CDBC, I believe that can be a solution. When it comes to international transactions, Madagascar is a country that has a gold reserve. Rather than thinking of another form of currency, we should diversify our reserve. This is why we've put in place a project on monetary gold. We believe that basing ourselves on monetary gold, we can have another way of settling our international transaction, enhance currency, and put inflation under check. Now, devaluation of the currency could be kept in check through the reserves and the sale of monetary gold. Now, the currency in Madagascar cannot be converted. Now, once we do so, we can convert it. We need to fine-tune it, and we can change it into dollar without making extra efforts. Thank you.
Because it's pretty rare that we get opportunities, right, to talk directly to regulators, to put our ideas to them. So I don't want to open up the floor to you. There should be some microphones roving around the room, I believe. The lady in the center row, please. There's a mic right behind you. There you go. Please, go ahead. Introduce yourself and ask your question.
Bonjour. Alors, je suis Valérie.
I'm Diop, Director of Innovation and Sustainable Development in a development bank. Now, the introduction of climate is of paramount importance, and I was wondering, what are your steps taken in terms of greening the monetary policy? Well, SARB in South Africa has been dealing with this topic. Now, I was wondering, what's your take? Well, would there be any centralized governance in order to green quantitatively our transactions and move towards a greener transaction? It's a privilege to have the floor and ask the question. That topic of financial inclusion and the KYC for populations in the informal sector. So I believe this is a very important topic. What are you doing to allow or facilitate in terms of mobile money to enroll the population in informal sector when it comes to KYC? Thank you very much.
Who would like to take that on? Governor Kassi, BROU?
Bien, merci. Je pense que...
Thank you.
Very critical because we see that climate change is having an impact in our region. It's impacting economic activities, agriculture, human impact. So we at the Central Bank of West African States, the BCEAO, we have initiated reflection to adapt our monetary policy framework to take into account the green finance. And we'll be working I'm not want to, there are many bankers in the room, I don't want to, but we will be proposing some type of regulation to really impact the way the financing of the economy, take into account this critical element, because it is already today recognized at the world level. Soon there will be the COP28 in Dubai. There are several discussions being made. We see that development bank already are having some medium and long-term financing based on this green finance. So I think something we are moving, we will be moving also, as many other central banks are doing. On the KYC today, as I said, we have seen a very exponential growth of mobile money operation, moving very, very, very quickly. And we see those growth taking place not only in urban area, but in rural areas. So today, people are using through the phone, through the various platforms that are provided by the various fintech and electronic operators, doing a lot of activities. We see women even in the market, they have not been to necessary, to school and so on, but using it. So I think it is something that will continue to expand, will continue to develop. And as we have put our financial inclusion strategy, because it was adopted in 2017 and starting to be implemented in 2019, impacted of course by COVID. The financial inclusion strategy that we have designed and is in place and being implemented has a very important component that we call education, financial education. So helping various sides of the society to be well informed on any financial activities, how to really operate those things, so that they can be more included in all financial in the financial sector. Thank you.
Would anyone else like Governor Diaz?
Oui, ce qui est un rapport.
When it comes to ESG, as far as we're concerned at the Central Bank, we approved this year a policy on ESG, and we are trying to implement it. Environmental and social governance, ESG. We have now refurbished the building just next to the Central Bank, and this building we engaged with the Minister of Finance, and we undertook two works that complies with the principles as laid down under ESG. In the financial system in Angola, we have the supervisory board of the financial system, and the central bank is on that board, and the governor is the chair of that board. During our last meeting, we approved ESG directives, environmental and social governance principles, made available to the commercial banks for them to actually address these concerns, for them to take steps in that regard. Towards the end of this year, on the 30th of November, as a result of a decision made by the supervisory board of the financial system, we intend to organize a conference on environmental and social governance, and in attendance will be two government stakeholders, from the financial system at national level, and we also invited representatives of central banks, as well as reps of foreign organizations dealing with these matters to share their experience with us.
for at least one more question. Could I have a mic on the front to the lady in black? Okay, there's a microphone coming your way now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bumi Bajomo, Chief Operating Officer, EcoBank Transnational. So you're all welcome to Lome. My question is in two parts, or should I say three. One is on the issue of attracting foreign investment into African economies. Before now, the attraction of Africa and the countries therein had been that we were able to offer higher level of returns because of the operating environment. It's a riskier environment, so the return is expected to be higher. But now with what have happened since COVID, we've seen the level of interest rates go up significantly in the developed world. So there is a flight of capital. But if you look across the African economies, maybe with the exception of 4, the monetary policy rate is far lower than the inflation rate. If that is the situation, how do we think the African economy will be able to attract the foreign investors that we're looking for? That is my first question. The second question still borders around interest rate. Because in the advanced world, they are credit-driven economies. So if they increase the interest rate, it affects the purchasing power of their citizens, so it can control inflation. But in Africa, our inflation is largely driven by the fact that we import a lot of the things that we use in our productive process. If we do not control the source of raw material, it means that our inflation is not really demand-driven. It's not because people are rushing to the supermarket to buy things. It's because the source, the process by which we bring in our input, is already quite expensive because we don't control. We can't bring grains from Ukraine easily. The shipping costs have gone up. So if we continue to increase interest rates, invariably, it seems we're hurting the citizens we're trying to protect. So I'm wondering, have we considered the alternative of addressing the supply sources before we continue to increase interest rate? Because if interest rates will solve it, it should have solved the problem by now. So I just wanted to know your thoughts, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting one. And for context, the question you're asking came up, I think, virtually every single time we had a session on Africa at the annual meetings of the World Bank and the IMF. It was the exact same question of, this is a problem we have to deal with, but do the tools that we as central bankers have, are they sufficient to deal with the problem? Governor Aivo, do you want to take that?
Sur la politique monétaire, la Banque centrale.
When it comes to the central bank, on our
Money. When you fight against inflation, the one thing, we don't do anymore ce qu'on appelle en français réserve obligatoire.
the compulsory reserve, we don't do it. That is, how do we manage liquidity? But we rather manage the cost of the money. Secondly, the central banks are not here to promote growth. We're here to fight inflation, to avoid negative growth in the country. Negative growth involves, although we have a positive growth rate, if it is lower than the inflation rate, we become poorer because the cost goes higher. What we need to understand, we want to say that the margin applied is limited by the purchasing power. If we increase the rate, money becomes more expensive, and liquidity is used by the operators will decrease, and in principle this will decrease their ability to incur debt. In the end, we hope that inflation will be limited. This is what we mean by monetary policy. But what is very important for our consumer, we have the goods at a low cost. You see, we need to fight against devaluation of the currency. If there is depreciation of the currency, the goods will be more expensive and inflation will be staring at us. And so we're trying to combine all these fights and fight against the high cost of living. The other thing is now attract a foreign capital to invest in a country. It's not just about how expensive the money. How do we secure investment? The free movement of capital. If the investors are not sure to have a return on investment, they will not come to the country. And this is where we've been talking about rating, as discussed in the previous sessions. Rating in Africa does not it's not positive for us. Maybe it is deliberate. If African countries are rated, some are rated, but nothing changes. When it comes to the ideals, the capital, there are 16 countries that are rated on the international market, for example, the green bond, and they're still expensive. But there is no trust. In African countries, there are several, so to say, too many coups d'etat, and lack of political stability is making people to flee. We're trying to mitigate the impact of this political crisis. That leads to economic crisis, then that also leads to monetary crisis.
Close. There's a whole debate, I think, that we could have around where we take, how we respond as central bankers to the challenges of inflation that all of our economies faces. And you're right, the challenges that we face are immense. But at the end of the day, to quote Abebe Amar Selassie, as director of the IMF's Africa department, fighting inflation is probably the most pro-poor thing any central banker can do. It's not pleasant, it's painful, but in the long run, it's for the public good. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for the central bankers on our panel today.